Welcome to Cactus Crossfire, your go-to for hot takes and prickly debates.
Welcome in, everybody, to our next episode of Cactus Crossfire. I'm your host, Sisto and Eddie. With me, as always, our good friend, Eddie Ablisser. Eddie, where you at?
Hey, good morning and happy holidays, everybody. We are in Nevada visiting. I've got a little setup podcast studio here, and I'm excited to be joined by many friends. Most importantly, though, we are back at the home of 8688, home of the infamous Gabriel Baca, who I have seen firsthand drown a fish. I know you think it's impossible, but he did it. Good to see you, Sisto.
Good to see you too, Eddie. Well, this is going to be our end of the year episode, and we're going to wrap things up with the best of 2025 of what happened here on the show and also what's happening in our respective states. But more excitingly, something that Eddie has been very adamant about us doing, we are now on Apple Podcasts. What do you think about that, Eddie?
Dude, I can't believe it. It's great. It's great. Apple Podcasts, I'm getting comments. We'll talk about fan reaction a little bit later, but it's so great that we get to reach people so they don't have to look at our ugly mugs anymore. They get to just listen to our voices and drive, put them in the headset and hear all the hot takes, prickly debates, and spicy comments from yours only.
And we got the holidays coming up. Looking at Eddie's jacket, he's always so stylish with the holidays, and he's got that full head of hair, so he's always looking good. We love that about Eddie. The holidays are coming up. He's trying to make sure that he's providing all the great Christmas presents for all of his kids, me for my niece, and we're trying to get them under those holiday sales. But the affordability crisis is real, and we're dealing with it. At the same time, a lot of our service industry folks who have been out there on the front lines helping us, who are immigrants and what's going on in that community still. That when we first started this conversation, we were talking about that. So we're going to jump into all of that. But for the first time ever, we have an in-studio guest. And our in-studio guest is one of the coolest vatos I know in the entire state of New Mexico. I've known him actually since we were in college, but at the same time, he's the 11th speaker. He's the current speaker of the House of Representatives, represents District 12. He serves on House Judiciary and Taxation. He's been known for his bipartisan leadership, and he actually expanded the working families tax credit, championed early childhood tax credit, and help secure the constitutional amendment for early childhood, which we're going to talk about here pretty soon, how that's changed and become more important. But our friend, your friend, our speaker, your speaker, Javier Martinez. Mr. Speaker, how are you doing?
Muy bien, gracias. Good to see both of you. Thank you for the invite to be here.
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You being the first one on here, it feels right. It feels right that you're the first guy to come in here. We love talking about the legislature. You know that I love the legislature as much as the other guys because I spent so much time there in my younger years when you and I both had much more fuller head of hair like Eddie does. So there you go. So, Mr. Speaker, 2025, big year for you. You had an amazing couple of sessions. You had amazing special sessions. You and the executive butted heads a little bit in one of them, but at the same time, you came back around and you came to some agreements on different things. What are your hot takes from 2025 for you in the New Mexico legislature?
State legislatures is where it all happens, right? Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of us are so focused on the national political environment, and maybe in some ways that's a sexier place to be. But legislatures really are delivering for working people. They are delivering on this affordability crisis, making it less unaffordable. They are delivering for families of all stripes. And here in New Mexico, I'm proud that we have led the way. By now you've all heard about the proposal for universal childcare, first state in the nation. That does not happen without the leadership of Democrats in the legislature, and I would take it a step further, Democrats in the state house, which I'm obviously very honored to be leading now for a couple years. Now as speaker, before that as majority leader. But it's been a good year for us. Now, I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk a little bit about what's happening at the federal level. I think what we've seen with Trump and his deportation machine, it's not immigration enforcement. They're not enforcing anything. In fact, they're breaking laws. They're breaking constitutional rights of people. They are completely dismantling any sense of decency in that federal system. And that hits close to home. New Mexico is home to tens of thousands of undocumented people, workers, many of whom are friends of ours and family of ours. And so in that light, we've got to stand up for them and fight for them.
Mr. Speaker, you've done an amazing job on all of those levels, and right now, one of the things that makes me the proudest with you is how you're constantly able to bring that perspective of what's happening in the macro, which is, these smaller communities, these within our families, really, our friends and our families, and coming from that background, that makes you a very unique individual in that conversation. I was reading, we're talking about our spicy takes, and one of our friends, U.S. Senator Ruben Gallego, a lot of folks are looking at him as, one of these new emerging Latino leaders, especially Latino male leaders. I keep telling him, come talk to Speaker Martinez. You've been talking about a lot of the same stuff that Senator Gallego has been talking about for a very long time. How do you feel that plays within the national narrative of the Latino vote, of Latino males? This last presidential election, within the first 24 hours, the talking heads were coming out and saying, Latino men, they're the problem. They went against Kamala. They didn't vote for Kamala. And when you look, and after the dust settled, it was a broad coalition that didn't vote for Kamala Harris. But since they focused in on us so much, and because we're the largest growing population group, how do you feel in the upcoming election that, we're going to be playing another role in that, and how do we bring those folks back into the party?
Look, as a son of immigrants, there's nothing more frustrating for me, for my late father, than inefficient, big, corrupt government. That's why so many of us left our homelands and left our countries of origin, because the governments back home worked for the ultra wealthy. They were corrupt, they were unstable, they were inefficient, they were full of red tape.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the reason why you saw so many of us shift away as part of this broader coalition that you mentioned is because government just wasn't working for people. And so that's been, for me, a guiding light. And not just last year or two since the election, but really my entire political career, which goes back before I got elected as a community organizer, right? It's about making systems work. And here in New Mexico, we've had Democrats in control of the legislature for most of our lives, except for 2 years, which is actually, interestingly enough, the cycle I was elected. I was in the minority for a couple of years. But it's been my guiding light. We've got to make government work for people. I'll give you all an example. Just yesterday, I was at a ribbon cutting of an old motel that got refurbished. It is now housing 78 families with young children who had previously been unhoused. That is the result of literally the State House at the last minute last year infusing $110 million into the state budget for Bernalillo County and the city of Albuquerque, with the agreement and the commitment from the leadership of those two entities that they would deliver housing for 1,000 families to move off the streets into supportive housing. Just yesterday, we cut the ribbon on one of those buildings. By the end of January, we would have hit the 1,000 family mark.
Wow.
I got to meet a mom and her 3 babies who had previously been unhoused, and it was the most rewarding thing. That is Democrats delivering for people who are at perhaps the most difficult moment in their lives, and we delivered for them.
Yeah.
That's what government should look like. That's what's going to get more of our people back into the Democratic Party here locally and nationally if we can deliver. And I would challenge anyone in federal politics and anyone thinking about running for president, give us a Project 2030. Tell us what you're going to do. Don't just tell us you're against Trump. Don't just tell us you hate Trump or the Republicans. Tell us what you're going to do and be bold and deliver.
Yeah, and I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, we just went through these municipal elections this last couple of months, and I was hearing from a lot of folks that they were tired of voting against someone. they were tired of voting against something, voting against Trump. They want to vote for something. And I think what you've done in your leadership and with your leadership team, really, I mean, you've got, Representative Sapansky from Santa Fe, you've got Representative Hockman Vigil out of Albuquerque, and representing very diverse communities, that you guys have been able to coalesce. And I think really under your leadership is saying, listen up, guys. Sometimes we have lofty ideas and goals within the progressive wing of our party, but it doesn't translate to what the people I know, my family, my friends, that's really going to affect them. And you're talking about one of the most basic things, and that's having a roof over your head. A lot of people over the years have asked me how I measure my own success, and I'm like, I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay my light bill. I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay my gas bill. I'm not worried how I'm going to pay my phone bill. It's those basic things that got me to where I am today. And I think it's where it got you too. I mean, I can remember folks, me and the speaker were circling around each other when I was looking for an apartment. And I think you had just gotten married at that time. And he was living in a small apartment complex at that time. I was going to move into the complex right behind him, possibly. We were all happy because we're going to be vecinos and hanging out next door to each other. Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Maybe that was a good thing.
Yeah, maybe it was a good thing. It could have been a bad thing. But at the same time, we know what it's like to face that struggle of finding a place to live and where we're going to keep our families housed and do what we need to do to get there. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, a lot of the times, I see that some of our friends on the far left, they don't like how we talk sometimes, guys that look like you and me. And that's rough because we're coming from a very real place. How are you maneuvering that within our party now?
Well, look, again, I think we first and foremost, I grew up at a time when we had pride in the fact that the Democratic Party was a Big Ten party. Mm-hmm. Right? Point blank. And it was not the party of cancellations or the party that, if you don't tote the party line or not even the party line, but an ideological line, you're out. When I became speaker, I made a commitment to every single one of my members, even the ones that I disagree with ideologically and politically, that I would fight for them every step of the way. And that will continue to be a guiding light in my leadership. The Democratic Party is the Big Ten party. We don't have a dictator at the top, and we have to abide by everything the dictator says or the autocrat says the way the other party does.
Yeah.
That, I think, gives us the space to be able to represent our districts. I represent a very liberal progressive district. And I represent it, I think, well, based on the last several election cycles, where I've been reelected with well over 75% of the vote every single time. And I will not always agree with those positions. But what my district appreciates, and they'll tell you directly, is the fact that I can take difficult votes that sometimes might be controversial in my district, but I come back to that district, I come back to those voters and hold myself accountable to them. Mm-hmm. And they hear my reasoning and they hear my perspective. And I think that has created a sense of mutual respect and appreciation for where we stand politically and ideologically. And I think the same can extend to the different public interest groups and social advocacy groups that are out there. We don't always have to agree, but we have to remember that there's always a goal in sight. And for me, and in my leadership, I've always said, I'm not afraid of compromise.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of compromise, except when it comes to the right of people to live a life full of dignity. Whether you're an LGBTQ kid, whether you are an immigrant, a woman's right to choose her reproductive health care, those are not negotiable. Mm-hmm. If you stand against those issues, then you're on the wrong side, as far as I'm concerned. But everything else, whether it's economic development, whether it's capital outlay, how to budget, how to invest, tax policy, we can always reach compromise.
I love the one thing that I love about you, Mr. Speaker, is you used to chair tax, right? Yeah. You were the chairman of tax for a number of years. And when tax conversations come up, I love when people don't realize that fact about you and they come to you with tax policy that you know is bad. And you're just like, no, that's not going to happen. Because like you said, it's tax policy that doesn't allow for people to lead a life with dignity. It's not just because it's, I'm Speaker Martinez and this is how it's going to be. It's that you're thoughtful about it. You're probably one of the fewest really thinking speakers that says, I love how our Republican friends love this idea of trickle down, right? All the time. And you understand that the trickle isn't really a trickle.
There is no trickle.
There is no trickle, yeah. And in that time when you were chair, you worked very closely with a state representative who's no longer there, a Republican, Jason Harper. Mm-hmm. And I used to enjoy how the two of you were, even though you guys were at separate ends of the spectrum, you guys always found a way to come together to work on the best tax policy for New Mexicans.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people can learn from your leadership style. A lot of people can learn. Eddie served in the Arizona State Senate, and he was one of those guys that, and he still is. He's still prickly. I mean, look at his face. Look at it. I mean, and so Eddie's had that experience of being on the inside of how the sausage is made, right? And I, to an extent, I mean, if you saw the last episode, I was talking about how I had my hands in the sausage and how it's being made. So I think the two of you both share that in that sense of that sometimes you have to make decisions that are best for all people, not just for a certain group, protecting the certain groups that need that, but at the same time, thinking about the broader policy. So moving forward into the new year, you've got an exciting 30-day session. You have $130 million in new revenue that's coming in. Capital outlay, you talked about that. That's something that we always talk about. As a former staffer, it was the bane of my existence because having to find winners and losers for legislators is not fun in that funding formula, and you don't want to do that, but you maneuver it and you figure out the best projects that are going to move the state forward. What are you seeing as some of the big battles coming up in the next 30-day session? Well,
look, every 30-day session is exciting. It's never boring. I used to think this is going to be easier. It's just a month, but it's 2 months of work condensed into one. We're going to do a lot of work on healthcare.
Okay.
Healthcare is at a crisis point across this nation. It is unaffordable. Yet another example of Democrats delivering on bread and butter issues. New Mexico is one of the few, if not the only state, where insurance premiums through the Obamacare exchange are not going to skyrocket because we, the House Democrats, have been working on things like the Healthcare Affordability Fund and the Healthcare Affordability Act, which passed in the 2021 session, but actually starts back in 2014 when I was still an advocate and an organizer before elected office. Mm-hmm. 10 years later, here we are able to deliver for people on their health insurance. However, there's a lot more work that needs to happen on healthcare. We're going to be passing a number of comprehensive healthcare compacts to ensure that different providers from other parts of the country can actually practice here without having to go through a full relicensure system. I want to explore ways to bring healthcare professionals from other countries. I'll give you both an example. There are a number of people in this state, Venezuelan and Cuban asylum seekers primarily, who have healthcare backgrounds, many of them medical doctors, and they're driving for DoorDash or they're driving for Uber. Mm-hmm. They can't practice here because of our archaic licensure systems. We're going to work on a bill to bring those folks into the fold and give them at least some sort of limited capacity to practice healthcare. Taxes. We've got to look at tax reform. We always have to be looking at tax reform. I'm proud of the work we've done over the last few years to make our tax code more equitable for working families. We have one of the best working families tax credits in the country. We have a state-level child tax credit in the books. Last year, we had a proposal, the chairman of tax had a proposal to eliminate income tax for working people completely. Unfortunately, that died in the Senate after that sausage-making process. But, those are all things that are always at the table, right, and that we're always willing to look at. And then lastly, housing. We've got to deliver on housing. We've got another tranche of money coming into the budget for supportive and transitional housing for unhoused people, as well as money in the budget to help families purchase their first homes, right? We all know, when my family migrated here, their wealth building, what little wealth they could build, was buying a home. We're going to make sure that those folks who want to buy a home, but right now it's unaffordable, that they can afford it through a state support system. So those are some of the priorities we're going to be working on. And then capital outlay, as you mentioned, look, it used to be a lot worse. It used to be that if you didn't vote the right way, the speaker would actually decide how much you got. Yeah. We don't do that anymore.
I remember those days.
But now it's a lot more equitable, and we all get a piece of it. But these are incredible investments that need to be made. And both of us are very familiar with the South Valley. The needs out there continue to be big, whether it's roads, infrastructure, water, sewer, et cetera. We're going to be making those investments again this year.
And and going back to those bread and butter issues is, and talking about, I mean, you and I both did, you as an advocate, me as a political staffer working in the South Valley of Albuquerque, probably one of the most economically diverse areas, but still a lot of poverty that exists in that community. And we were constantly having conversations about, it's about roads. It's about, clean. It's about some areas. I think one of your colleagues, Chairman Romero, when he got into the legislature, he didn't even have city water or county water in his own neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And he was able to get that done within the first year of his term to make sure that he actually had the ability for his friends and neighbors to tie in a city water and sewer. But those were challenges that were still existing in so many parts of our state moving forward. And I think that a lot of folks get lost in the idea that capital outlay is just, it's your guys' slush fund. You guys get to do whatever you want. But you guys are really thoughtful about how you spend that money. You guys are really, you guys really think, okay, what can I do now that I can build on, right? Because, I mean, capital, a lot of people think it's a lot of money. But, I mean, when you're dealing with a $14 billion budget now, and you're getting, $2.8 million to play around with, that's a drop in the bucket.
And that's for the Senate. The House gets about 1.7.
Sorry, I spent a lot more time in the Senate the last few years, Mr. Speaker. But those are those issues that people want to, that they want us to step up for them. They want us to help them with. I mean, when I like talking, because now you guys have legislative assistants, which is really funny to me because they're making a lot of money compared to what I used to make doing the job. But at the same time, the interesting part about that is that your guys are growing, you're evolving, you're changing. But I'm always constantly telling these legislative assistants when I get a chance to pull them aside and saying, who's the little old lady that's constantly calling you saying that she just wants the road paved? Who's that little old lady who's calling you that her son is sitting in MDC and hasn't been seen in front of a judge and is, has a health condition inside the facility? Those are those real world issues that I used to deal with that were the most satisfying to me. A good friend of ours, yours and mine, Michael Chavez, one year we were out putting out political signs down in San Jose. And election night is happening, and used to, back in those days, you had separate precincts, and you had to go put up your signs there, and you had to be ready with your cafe and burritos and ready for your volunteers the next morning. So we're going out putting up signs that night before, and we're driving through San Jose, and the senator I was working for was running for re-election, and I said, and I had a little notepad in my truck, and I'm writing down lights on John and Hazeldean, lights here, fix sidewalk here. And he's like, what are you doing? And I said, we're going to work on those projects next year. I said, when he gets capital outlay, we're going to put in money to do this and do that and do this and do that. 4 years later, running again, we're out doing it all over again. And I'm driving through, I'm not taking out my notepad as much. And he goes, you did it. And I said, what do you mean? He says, 4 years ago, you put down on a little piece of paper that you're going to put streetlights on this neighborhood so that these kids who are playing out here could at least play baseball in the street, mm-hmm. right? And not get hit or stay out a little while later and feel safe. And he says, you got that done. He said, the sidewalks are all brand new. He said, that's what we should be doing. And I said, yes, mijo, that's what we should be doing.
That's Democrats delivering.
That's Democrats delivering. But it's Democrats at all levels, right? It's all it's the activists, it's the staffers, it's the communicators that are out here. It's us as communicators. I mean, here at Cactus Crossfire, we're constantly trying to raise the level of debate and kind of peel back the shades of politics and give people real insight that they normally don't get. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Speaker, you have been amazing in that area because you're just this straight shooter that comes out of the same barrio that I came out of, right? And you worked in those trenches for a lot of years, and you're never that far from it. So I am always very, you've heard me on election night, every time I get a chance to sing the praises of the speaker, I do, because you've grown. You really have grown as a legislator and as a leader in our state. And I wish that more of our national leaders would come down and say, you know what, Speaker Martinez, how do you stay connected? How do you stay connected to the community? One of the things that you do the most that I love in your social media is you'll have a thought in your head, and then it comes to you, and you're at the Little League game. You're umping at a Little League game, or you're coaching or something at that level. And at the same time, you're constitutionally the fourth in line to being governor of the state of New Mexico, and you're finding time to give back that time in service. How do you balance that? How does that happen in your world?
The most important thing for me is what we're leaving the next generation, right? And so I'm a father to two kids. One of them, the younger one, plays baseball, and I also my wife and I help raise our three nieces, my sister's kids, and the middle one is 9. And so strategically, I put them both on the same baseball team. Otherwise, I've got 2 places to go to at the same time on the same day. And so I spend a lot of time in Little League field, but it's not just those 2 kids. It's the dozens of kids at the Little League from all backgrounds. And across from that Little League, Sisto, is the juvenile long-term detention center, literally across the street. Every dollar we invest in activities like Little League baseball is one less dollar we're going to have to spend in incarcerating these kids later on. And to me, we've got to find the time. And people like me, even though, we're in politics and, as you said, the fourth in line and I would argue the highest office in the legislature, it's meaningless if we're not uplifting our children in a direct way. And that includes both the children in our circle, our own children, but also children throughout the community. Hence the constitutional amendment for early childhood, for example, which we fought for 10 years to pass and redistribute hundreds of millions of dollars every single year from New Mexico's permanent funds back into working families with babies. This last year, we had a proposal to implement a welcome baby fund. Every family who had a child would get up to 12 weeks off of work and $3,000 a month to stay home with their baby if they choose to, or to pay for childcare. These are all bread and butter issues. They're bold ideas that deliver for working people. And if we keep doing that, the voters will keep delivering for us and sending us back to do the good work.
No, I mean, Mr. Speaker, you have led a transitional time in the legislature during your time. I mean, even your rise into leadership was amazing. I mean, the status quo was kind of saying, oh, they were going to go in this direction, and you guys came in and said, no, we're going to go in this direction, which, I mean, was healthy for the caucus. I think it was healthy for the caucus to have you come up and be that voice and prove to everybody that you are the leader that we all know that you are. And so for those of us that watch you, and I know everybody who's out there seems that might be a love note to Speaker Martinez from me. It's always a love note to Speaker Martinez from me, because the guy really is the guy you see in front of you guys right now is the guy you get, whether it be in front of the camera or behind the camera. That's one of the things about Speaker Martinez that people have to really respect, and I respect it because when I was reading about Senator Gallego becoming one of these leaders, one of the strange things that gets said about Hispanic males in the media and press when we start rising through the ranks is that we're rough around the edges, right? That we may be a little too prickly, for people to handle, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that most politicians in our history, I think people would say that George Washington was a little rough around the edges at times too, you know. And so, but it seems that it applies to us more now than ever before. But Mr. Speaker, so this next session, you know, we're wishing you the best of luck. You're going to have a big legislative session this session. I think that a lot of the initiatives that you're going to be pushing forward are going to be more transformative than what people are looking at. Folks that are watching this program, you guys want to see some fun. We broadcast our legislature on nmlegis.gov. Tune in, watch. Watching the speaker maneuver that floor is pretty amazing. The fact that you handle those members very well in a very jovial and professional way is, I think, a welcome back to the legislature. It's great to see you up there. So I want to thank you from all of us for fighting for all of us and not forgetting a lot of us too. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. Eddie, you got anything?
Well, listen, Sisto, I appreciate the dialogue. I think you all know, and Mr. Speaker, I coming on here means the world to us. I do want to say that oftentimes when Sisto and I talk, we try to really push our party. There's often times that we sit back and we look at our friends, we look at the folks that are part of the big tent, and we tend to make a lot of excuses for a lot of them, right? And from my perspective, I think the public is wanting consistency in criticism, consistency in praise. Oftentimes we say, hey, look, sometimes Republicans do some freaking amazing things, right? And we got to applaud them for it. And sometimes our bonehead Democrats need to shut up and get out of the way, because what the hell are they saying? Something that I've noticed about you and the New Mexico legislature, it is a very gentleman legislature and gentlewoman legislature, I should add. I see a lot of respect from both sides of the aisle. I see a lot of respect from within the fissures within your caucus. That can't be said for many other state legislatures out here in the Southwest. We see a lot of divisiveness, and frankly, I think that comes down to leadership. It comes down to those that are at the helm, right? Bring in the cats who are wandering around. Every single one of them thinks that they should be president of the United States, sitting in their chair, and all of a sudden unify around a common message. And I think that is testament to the work that you're doing and Mr. Worth's doing over in the Senate, and some really good stuff that we have seen from the outside. So congratulations on that. We are fans. I would love to ask a couple things, Sisto, before we lose a speaker, just some good stuff, because I think, you look at what's happening, and I remember my time, right? And I occupied one of these demographics. I am very critical of the grumpy politicians and the naive politicians. And I would tend to assign many of our grumpy personas to those that we need to be respectful for, but they're the older. These are the older politicians. They've been around. They've seen it before. They've gone through the trenches and toughed it out. And now, here comes young, stupid guys like me who get elected at the age of 24, and we're the naive ones, right? And we bring up these crazy policies. We bring up these bizarre, and when I was elected speaker, social media wasn't a thing. So my question, I want to hear, you don't have to get into naming names or anything, but how do you manage the vast diversity within your own caucus, from the grumpy guys that are like, come on, Mijo, just chill out, man. Like, you don't need to go crazy, to these youngsters that are like out there doing social media, influencing on the assembly floor, right? And so what happens? How do you manage?
Easy, Eddie. He's doing it on the floor. Easy.
Are you one of those?
No, he's not. No, he's not. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I barely know how to use social media, Eddie. So no, it wouldn't be me. No, look, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think some of the more veteran members, there's just a lot to learn from, especially because they've been around and they've seen it all sometimes. And in a way, you've got to treat with respect. One thing that was not mentioned today in the conversation around taxes, Representative Harper, Republican, former representative, and I worked really closely on taxes. And I'm a fairly liberal, progressive guy. He is a pretty conservative dude. But there's a third person involved here, and unfortunately he's no longer with us, but Chairman Jim Trujillo, old school Santa Fe Democrat, former, business owner and whatnot. Very conservative, very moderate. And he had a lot of good ideas. And then oftentimes he would be like, "Mijo, like, what are you doing? Calm down, chill out." But he always gave me the space to grow, and he always almost allowed me to go screw up a couple of times, and gain my footing, right? When I took over as co-chair with him, I treated him with nothing but respect. Even though he gave me the checkbook, if you will, to do what I wanted to do, I ran that committee in his spirit, in his light, because he is one of our elders. And that's another thing about the Latino community. We respect our elders. We take value, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, with the younger ones, because I'm sort of like the middle brother now, right? I'm not new, but I'm not totally old yet. And so we have these new members who come in, and it's the same level of respect, right? That we afford to them, that I afford to them. One of the best members of this house, and if you haven't seen her work, check it out. Representative Cristina Parajon. I think she might be like 24, 25. I mean, she's really young. She's only one of two, I believe, Gen Zers, her and John Block on the Republican side. And she has, out of the box, sometimes kind of crazy ideas, right? But I sit down and I listen, and then she walks me through them, and then they're no longer that crazy, right? They start to make a little bit more sense. I think it's respect. I think it's giving people the space to grow. If people are going to be doing TikTok videos from the floor or whatever, like, that's a harder one. I don't know how do you put that cat in the bag, but I certainly think that there's a lot of value in our elders, in our veteranos, and in our younger members, right? And the last thing people like me and in my position should be doing is censoring anyone or that's not how we do things, right? Because so many of us, and Sisto remembers this, back in the day when we were starting to break into politics 25 years ago or so, there were a lot of those veteranos who would not open the door for us, right? So that's how I navigate it. I mean, it's not perfect, obviously. I mean, I've had some veteranos that get really mad at me for one reason or another. And I've had some younger members who are like, "Oh, man, this guy is just part of the establishment. We'll never move the needle." But hey, proof is in the pudding, right? And all you got to do is look at the policies the last 10 years that we've enacted as House Democrats, and they are transformative, and they are changing people's lives.
And I think that the quorum that you've talked about, that mutual respect that goes both ways, is so important. People forget that. I mean, politics becomes so heated. People want to create these divisive islands that separate each other in such aggressive tones, right? And we become us versus them in perpetual motion. Oftentimes, when you're in the heat of what you're doing down at the Capitol, it has to be sitting down for over a cup of coffee and chatting, about what these things are happening. And so I appreciate that. I do think that New Mexico has a much more calmer temperament than many other states. I'll tell you, when I was one of those youngsters elected, I think I drove my leadership crazy, Speaker. I remember, and I look back, and I think a lot of it is because many of us were, we were in the minority. I was in the minority for 10 years, Mr. Speaker. Like, we didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance to really advance legislation. So what did we do? We played games with amendments. And you Google my name and the term mud flaps, you're going to get a whole litany of news articles about Representative Ablisser trying to ban the pornographic images on mud flaps. I drove my leadership crazy with that amendment. I was honestly, it was not in good faith. I admit to some of this stuff, Mr. Speaker, but that's what happens when I think you get ostracized or excluded from the conversation, right? I think it wasn't ostracization, it was excluded. We weren't considered as the young Democrats as part of the process. And so I'm like, you know what? The one power I had was to draft an amendment. I threw some crazy amendments up. But yeah, our truckers, the Truckers Association called me up and like, what the hell are you doing, man? You're gonna send our truckers into jail because they got a silhouette of a naked girl on their mud flaps, Eddie. Like, what are you doing? It turned into a big news article that I don't think I intended for it to become, but stuff like that happens, right? I'm sure you guys have some silly stuff that happens on the floor. You know, one of our partners, Sisto and my partner in Nevada, every May 11th is Pretty Ricky Day. And our attorney general in Nevada, when he was senator, sponsored a piece of legislation that deemed May 11th as Pretty Ricky Day, Pretty Ricky Guerrier Day. And we celebrate it every time. But, you know, sometimes you're bored also on the floor. You ain't got nothing better to do. Pass a resolution to make fun and bond people together. So anyway, just a couple comments about crazy things that get introduced. You got any stories about some crazy legislation that's been introduced?
Oh my goodness! You know, we had a memorial on the floor once celebrating. There was some moose that, for whatever reason, kept venturing down into Santa Fe, and we don't have moose here. And somebody named it Marty, and there was a memorial on the floor, and I think it took about an hour and a half of debate on honoring Marty the Moose. But look, when I came in and I was in the minority, I was very much like you too, and sponsored a lot of crazy amendments on Republican bills because that's all we could do, and we had a good time doing it. But man, I gotta tell you, I don't think I have as crazy a story as yours. I don't think I ever tried to ban anything or anything of that sort. So congratulations.
Well, that's the week. That is honestly the most tame amendment. I'm going to save the other stuff for later. There's something that has to do with Satanism in there, but we're not going to go there, Mr. Speaker.
and that's the thing, Mr. Speaker, is like you were saying earlier, and you're right, Representative Trujillo. I love the mentorship guidance that he was able to give you, and you and I both remember, and we won't name names of people who kept the door closed, you know, because they were worried that the young guys were coming in and they're going to push us away and all this other stuff. But I was a benefit of that. I was a benefit of those veteranos showing me how the process worked, how the sausage was made. You and I can remember many a time where we were sitting in some state representatives' backyards, you know, getting that access of saying, you know, this is where we think there are problems, and they're making us become more critically thinking about what we were proposing. And it's great to hear that you're doing that with somebody like even Representative Parajon, because somebody did that for us a couple of times. It wasn't completely everybody. There was just a few of the ones that were kind of in leadership and were grumpy. So que tanto. But, you know, and it's funny now because I laugh because when I'm walking around the Capitol, I see some of those grumpy ones and I'm like, hey, Representative, how are you? And people are like, who is that? And I'm like, that's Representative so-and-so. He did this, he did that, he did this. And one of them came to me last session and said, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing now because you've earned where you've gotten. But at the same time, you respect the ones that came before you. And even though we may have disagreed with them, we still respect them, right? And we lift them up when we can, and we help them where we can. And I think that that's something that you're absolutely right. Our community does very well in lifting each other up when we can. It's not always the crab bowl like people like to portray first and foremost. There's a little bit of it, but not as much as I think with our generation, it's a little bit different. But it's funny because I often tell our friend Senator Maestas, because we all kind of started at around the same time. I'm like, bro, we're the problem now, bro. We used to point at those old guys and say, they're the problem. We're the problem now. We earned every piece of gray that we have in our beards, you know. So thank you again, Mr. Speaker. But before you go, we've got a little gift for you. So if you'll just grab your little bag right there in front. No, that one right in front of you, that's yours. Go ahead and open it up. It's nothing's going to pop out on you. I promise you that. But you might want to, you know.
Look at that. It's the official Cactus Crossfire hat.
The official Cactus Crossfire hat. Since you're our first guest, we decided that we'd get you a little gift. And thank you for all the time that you spent here with us. And We hope it fits. Yep.
There you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Cactus Crossfire. You're now you're
Good
branded.
looking hat, Mr. Speaker.
Well, now I have, let's see, this is going to be hat number 58 or 59. So, perfect. I'll put it into the rotation.
Oh, we appreciate you, Mr.
Sure,
Speaker.
it's not
Thank you.
56, 7.
Oh, come on now. Come on now. You guys need to have
Who
an
has
emphasis.
kids, huh?
That's what I'm prickly about. You didn't ask me, but I'm prickly about the 6'7".
Well, if you'd like, Mr. Speaker, we'll take your spicy, prickly, and quickly comments as you're headed out the door.
You know, there's nothing more gross to me than this dude in the White House literally profiting off his office shamelessly and then taking away healthcare and food from working people. I'm prickly about that, and that's going to drive me in the 30-day session and into the 2026 midterm. And we're going to take this country back.
And what's spicy for you?
What's spicy? Oh, man. My mom's tamales.
See, I knew it was.
They hit differently this year. I think
Yeah.
she might have been mad at me or something.
And
but-
quickly, what do you got for us? What's something that we might see in the quickly coming up in the 2026 legislative session?
In the 2026 legislative session, you're going to see the state of New Mexico lead the way on immigrant protections. And no shame at all. We have to take care of our people. Because as I said earlier, Sisto, in New Mexico, we've got multi-generational Hispanics and we've got recent immigrants. And I think you and I are an example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're both being targeted.
Yep.
And we're going to push back, and we're going to lead the way for the rest of this country.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for stopping in on Cactus Crossfire. We appreciate always seeing you, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
See you
you.
next time. Happy
Thanks, Mr.
holidays.
Speaker.
Merry Christmas.
You know, Eddie, we've got some new information coming through, an Emerson poll. Have you taken a look at this thing?
Oh, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. This gets to the heart of everything we've been talking about,
Okay.
right? You look at this data and you look at what just was released for the 2028 presidential election. If you compare the extremes from both parties, right? Progressive Democrats versus MAGA Republicans, it's a split, 43 to 42. Like there is, it's not blowing the country away.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't running to support these folks at high numbers. But if you compare a moderate Republican to a progressive Democrat, the moderate Republican destroys the progressive Democrat by 12 points. And the same goes on the opposite end. It's a little bit closer. The moderate Democrat to the MAGA Republican, it's about a 10-point swing, 47 to 38. And then you look at moderate to moderate action, right? While it's interesting, the Republican moderate goes up and the moderate Democrat goes down from the progressive Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because of, personality. We tend to attribute that to who it is on the ballot. But you look at the upcoming election, right? And you continually push this narrative. Democrats need to put their best moderate voice forward, focusing on the economy, right? None of this progressive extremism. And you pair that with a MAGA Republican, they're going to destroy him in the election.
Okay. So this is a general election matchup, right? That's what we're looking at here as far as polling,
Absolutely.
right? So this is a general election. What I would love to see, so that we can make this hit the point home with our friends in our respective parties, is put the moderate Democrat up and the progressive Democrat in primaries, put the MAGA Republican up versus the moderate Republican up, and watch where those numbers lie in their respective primaries. Okay?
Yep.
Because this is the general election. Now, this is the funny part. This is not any different than any other poll we've seen over the last 6 months, even in the mayor's races, right? But the interesting part to me is how the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, the MAGA Republican wing of the Republican Party, will not allow for the moderate voices to come through, even though the polling shows that those voices are the ones that people want to hear from. And at the end of the day, until we have, and maybe New Mexico will be the first one to let this happen, New Mexico is going to have their first election this year where it is a semi-open primary, which means independents can vote in the Democratic primary or the Republican primary. They just walk in and say, I want to vote in that primary. My message to them is this. If you're a moderate independent and you don't think that your voices mattered in your respective party that you have left, because most of those, that's what the independents are. They're people now in the majority that have left their respective parties. If you want to get to the moderate, go in and pull that lever for the moderate candidate if they decide to show up. And that's the other thing, Eddie. I mean, in some of these states where it's a close primary, a moderate can't get out of the primary. They just can't.
Yep.
But these numbers
That's been the problem all along.
But these numbers show when you look at the progressive Democrat versus the MAGA Republican 43-42, right? That's a 1-point difference, right? But when you look at the moderate Democrat versus the MAGA Republican, it's almost a 10-point jump. 47-38. Moderate Republican versus moderate Democrat. There's the problem. If two moderates are running against each other, that's where people get, in my party, get freaked out. They say, nope, we can't have that happen because if we elect a moderate and they elect a moderate Republican, guess what? We lose, right?
But that shows us if the Republican Party threw up a moderate Republican in either situation, they have an advantage. That goes back to messaging within the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The Democrats, the moderate Democrats, need to capture that Main Street vote, right? And it comes back to economy.
But brother,
this is really important.
But brother,
as we
but
approach
right
the
now,
cycle.
in my modeling that I'm doing here in New Mexico and that I've been using for the last couple of years, moderate Democrats that vote, not Democrats who are people who are Democrats, okay, moderate Democrats who vote, only make up like 3% of the total Democratic vote. 4% out of the entire vote that shows up in elections, okay? Moderates, if you're listening to me, look at my face. Vote. We need you in the polls because just because you don't think, if you, in some of these districts, I swear to God, you guys, I mean, we saw it now in the city council race here in Albuquerque, out on District 1, Clarissa Pena versus Teresa Garcia, a moderate Democrat running against a progressive Republican. A progressive Democrat. She won by 1.5% vote. The moderate did. And she won on early and election day. So people decided in that district, a predominantly Hispanic district, to show up and support the moderate. People need to take stock of that moving forward as we're moving into the next year and what we're going to be looking at and what we're going to be trying to do. So everybody, polling matters, but look at where the poll lies. This is a poll that lies within the primaries. So if you want to get involved, you pick a side. If you're in a closed primary state, if you're an independent in New Mexico, gear yourself up for this next election and get involved in the next election and figure out where we're going to be. So that's where we're going to land on that one.
All right. Well, I'm ready for our tri-takes before the holiday season. Sisto, you ready?
I'm ready for our tri-takes. This is our last tri-takes for the holidays. We'll come back in 2026 stronger than ever. But at the same time, Eddie, what do you got for me that's prickly?
All right. My prickly take of our, this episode and maybe for the year. Prickly. Cactus Crossfire came from the CNN, this amazing opportunity where we could debate and push ideas against each other and with each other. And today was a little bit more of a love fest because we had fantastic, guests involved in the conversation around policy. But my prickly take comes to an alumni of that CNN Crossfire who has significantly sold his soul to the devil. And I'm talking about none other than Qatar Carlson. Qatar Carlson, who used to have good takes and spicy debates, now sold his soul to the Muslim Brotherhood and the Palestinian Authority and is out there schlepping for his highest bidder out in the Middle East.
Yeah.
You know, shame on you, Qatar Carlson. You used to be a man that had integrity in your debates, even though I didn't agree with you probably 95% of the time. Now you're simply a shill for an extreme Muslim voice from the Middle East. That's my prickly take.
Okay, that's your prickly. What do you got for me that's spicy?
All right, spicy. Holiday season is upon us, and I am fighting with my wife because I want to watch the #1 Christmas movie, the best Christmas movie that exists with my kids, Die Hard. John McClane overcoming terrorism and celebrating the Christmas spirit with his family, right? Yeah. Yippee-ki-yay! That's what Christmas is all about. Come on!
This is
Die Hard, everyone.
This is the #1 Christmas debate that I have heard this year is whether Die Hard is a true Christmas movie. So there you go. We know where it's landing in. It's a 50-50 split in the Ablisher household. So there we go. So what do you got for me that's quickly, brother?
All right, quickly. After spending the good hour with the speaker, I'm just saying, sign me up, brother. Sign me up. One of those U.S. Senate seats is going to open up eventually. Sign me up. I'm all in. U.S. Senator Javier Martinez, 2030, 2032, yeah. Whenever that seat opens up, I'm in line to support that man. What an amazing person. I see him as the next U.S. Senator in the state of New Mexico.
Well,
Sisto, how about you? Give me something.
I want everybody to understand this. We don't talk to each other about this. So my prickly is this. The junior senator from Arizona, Ruben Gallego, being touted as the next leader of Latinos in the Democratic Party. Senator, I'd like to remind you there are 2 other members of the Senate that have more seniority than you in that role and have served a little bit longer in both chambers than you. So show a little deference to those guys and show, and ladies, and show, and also show the same amount of deference that our speaker was talking about. Respect the people that came before you. So that would be that's my prickly one. My spicy is, I want people that are fans of Die Hard as a Christmas movie to take into their hearts this year another Christmas movie that I was able to catch this year called Fat Man with Mel Gibson. It's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener to what real Christmas movies are. And I think that if we're going to say that The Fat Man is a Christmas movie, it should be lumped in there with Die Hard as one of the new great holiday classics that everybody should check out this holiday season. So I've
never heard of that. I'm going to take a look at that.
There's my spicy. It's Mel Gibson as Santa Claus. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, all right. Sign me up. All right. Something quickly, Sisto.
And something quickly is this. We're lucky to have people like Speaker Martinez in our political class and as our true public servants. The next cycle is coming up in 2026. We're going to start, I think quickly, we're going to start seeing more people that are moderates start showing up in 2026 and trying to buck the system. Maybe today that polling will change some people's minds, but I think that this next cycle we're going to see more moderates coming back to the political discourse than what we've seen before. So that's it quickly. Eddie, Happy New Year to you and your family. Happy holidays.
But before we leave, Sisto, I have 2 fan reactions that were sent to me, and I got to bring this up on the Cactus Crossfire. First, I got a message from Robbie and Demo. Robbie and Demo are asking me, why are we not talking about marijuana policy more often on the show? I mean, I don't know. Like, apparently these 2 are getting on the Cactus Crossfire YouTube page, and they might be doing something legal in their states, if it is, and enjoying the Cactus Crossfire in their own way. But maybe one day we'll talk about marijuana policy in your states. Also, I got a message from DC, Matt, and Tim, all talking about, don't forget to be strong advocates for the LGBTQ community. And absolutely, I know we brought this up before, but DC, I'm looking at you, man. We will absolutely continue to be strong voices for our friends and our allies in the LGBTQ community. I think sometimes it's just the conversations that happen around policy. So those fans that have reached out to me specifically on this issue,
Eddie,
appreciate your engagement.
I thought that those first two fans that wanted us to talk about marijuana is the one that sent you that jacket. Those aren't leaves on your jacket. Oh, those are snowflakes. Those are snowflakes.
Hey, but it's got that double entendre meaning, right?
There you go.
Snowflakes
there
out
you go.
there.
We're going to talk about those things because here in New Mexico, it's going to get spicy in 2026. Trust me, we're going to talk about that and a lot more in the coming new year. Thank you again to Gabe and our producer Mandy for being the best team and helping us put this together. Eddie, always a pleasure, and we'll see you next year.
Peace.